Now this, we thought there was a deal to fund the Department of Homeland Security and prevent a government shutdown. That effort is now stalled. Bill Melugin joining us from Capitol Hill. What happened, Bill?
Well, Stuart, at this point, a partial government shutdown is inevitable. The only question is, how long is it going to be? Is it just going to go through the weekend, or could it potentially go further than that? And things had been looking positive down here last night. President Trump had put out a truth social saying that he and Senate Democrats had agreed to a framework on a tentative deal, but the Senate just couldn't get on the same page, and they left last night without taking any action. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham is one of the holdups. He is not happy with the way negotiations are going, telling reporters off camera, quote, "We can find a way forward, but not this way. ICE agents are not infallible, but I appreciate what they're doing. I've never been more offended than I am right now by what's being said about these folks." Now, 78% of the federal government is set to run out of funding at midnight tonight. The Senate has been considering a package of 6 funding bills to fix that. But House and Senate Democrats say they're not going to support the DHS funding bill because it funds ICE and doesn't reform the agency.
Well, we want to avoid a government shutdown, but it's necessary to ensure that the Department of Homeland Security dramatically changes the way in which it has been conducting itself.
Now, the deal between the White House and the Senate would see that DHS bill broken off from the other 5 spending bills. But the problem with that is that would then kick the bills back to the House, which is out of session this week. And Speaker Johnson says a shutdown appears unavoidable.
At this moment, I'm not that confident, to be honest. I mean, the Senate is doing their thing tonight. I've got to make some tough decisions later this evening on how soon we can get House members back, if indeed they send us the package.
Speaker Johnson says realistically the earliest he could get the House back here on the Hill to convene would be Monday. So even if the Senate comes together today and passes some of these funding bills, the House isn't going to be here to take action on them. It would take several days for the House to move on those. So the Senate is going to reconvene today here on Capitol Hill at 11 a.m. Stuart, their backs are against the wall. They got to figure out some sort of path forward quickly. We'll send it back to you.
Another mess. Bill Melugin, thanks very much. New York Congressman Mike Lawler joins me now. Congressman, it seems to me that the Democrats are prepared to shut down the government just to punish ICE. What do you say to that?
Well, once again, Chuck Schumer is playing politics. Shutting down the government is not a solution. And there was a bipartisan negotiated Homeland Security funding bill, along with 5 other bills that have been negotiated over the last few weeks. Every bill passed the House with bipartisan support. So there was no reason to shut the government down. I understand they want to focus in on changes in terms of how ICE is operating, some of the tactics that are being used, and those are negotiations and discussions that can happen. But to shut the government down is foolish. And remember, Stuart, ICE is funded through 2029. It was part of the Working Families Tax Cut package, the funding for ICE. So they're really not impacting ICE with this shutdown. They're impacting FEMA. They're impacting the Coast Guard. They're impacting TSA. This is another effort by Chuck Schumer to play politics rather than actually negotiate in good faith and govern.
Yeah, they better get the blame again, too. Congressman, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries is ramping up his rhetoric against ICE. He even called it a killing machine. And now he's from New York, Hakeem Jeffries. And the anti-ICE movement is growing in New York and elsewhere. What can you do about this?
Look, what happened in Minneapolis was tragic. Nobody wants to see anyone lose their life, least of all law enforcement. The fact is the situation on the ground in Minneapolis devolved in measure because of the anti-ICE rhetoric by politicians like Hakeem Jeffries, calling ICE the Gestapo, encouraging protesters to get in the faces of ICE, to block them, to spit on them. You saw the video, obviously, of Alex Preddy 11 days before the shooting, spitting on ICE agents and kicking the car. This is not helpful. The rhetoric is not helpful. Calling American citizens domestic terrorists is not helpful. I think it is incumbent on every elected official to tone the rhetoric down, I think it is also incumbent, especially in the state of Minnesota or New York or California or Illinois, where they have these sanctuary city and state policies. It needs to end.
Yeah.
Local and state law enforcement must cooperate with federal officials, especially on crowd control. And Stuart, in my area, Rockland County, where I live, one of my Democratic opponents, Beth Davidson, is trying to make Rockland a sanctuary county after last week's incident. The lesson she's learning is let's have more division, let's have more less cooperation and more havoc. That is not what we need. We need to ensure safety. That means we need greater cooperation between federal, state, and local officials.
And get rid of sanctuary cities and states. That's my opinion. Congressman Lawler, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely.